Focus of smart cities is not about being just smart for sake of being smart. It's more about addressing that number one challenge the world is facing today. Good afternoon, everyone. As we said, my name is Rahul Shah. I'm a sector director for the built environment BSI. Without wasting too much of your time, I would like to replay the video that some of you might have just seen, and then we'll take it from there. So just for 2 minutes, I will play who we are, BSI, as a global brand. Started life back in 1901 as BSI. Back in the photograph that you see here on the screen is a photo of city of London back in 1901 when they had lots of trams with different tram track gauges. And back in 1901, the Institute of Civil Engineers met to actually standardize and scale up that network of trams and rail network. And one of the things they wanted to standardize was tram track gauges, from 75 to 5. And we heard a lot. I don't know if you attended the session before lunch, the panel discussion. We heard a lot about scalability, consistency, and working with startups and supporting them in terms of, scale it up. And having standardized processes help businesses of all sizes and shapes to standardize. And in this particular case, standardizing tram track gauges from 75 to 5 and standardizing material properties, and they captured that in some form of document, and that became the world's first standard in 1901. And since then, we've been busy working with the governments and countries around the world, creating standards, whether it's for safety, quality, information security. Now we're talking smart cities, digital twin, IoT, and so many things. So we have thousands and thousands of best practices. When we talk about smart city, when we talk about digital twin, IoT, sensors, the first thing we look at is, okay, what's the benchmark? What's the global benchmark? What does good look like, right? And this is where we started our life as BSI, and since then we've been working with the industry in creating best practice. But we don't just stop there. As a Royal Charter institution, we are incorporated under Royal Charter in the UK. Our role is to work in the good, for the public good, in the interest of public. So we are a non-profit distribution organization, not commercially driven or shareholder driven, so that we can work independently. We don't have any influence of governments. Although we are a UK's national body, we work completely independently so that we can protect the interest of people and businesses as well. So what we do is we shape best practices with the experts like yourself, but then we support you in terms of embedding that best practice by way of training, education, and we heard from Mr. Rahul Kapoor, I think, before lunch, that capacity building is one of the biggest sort of focus area as well when it comes to smart cities. We need to upskill our workforce. What does smart city look like, right? So in terms of embedding that best practice, upskilling, training. We also provide global benchmarking. When people say, we got the best smart city framework or strategy in place, how can we benchmark with the global standards, global cities? And we've been working with cities in Japan, in South Korea, and around the world, in China and elsewhere, in terms of benchmarking their smart city framework strategies and processes against global benchmarks. And then we can also support you in terms of providing strategic consulting as well in terms of that sort of best practice. But I wanted to start with this because we heard a lot today from the earlier speakers that the main focus of smart cities is not about being just smart for sake of being smart. It's more about addressing that #1 challenge the world is facing today, and that is climate change, and sustainability. And we heard from Pune Smart City, net zero goals. We heard from New Delhi Municipal, the council about the carbon reduction plans and so forth as well. So I think sustainability must be at the heart of everything we do in smart city, and at BSI, it is our everything we do around sustainability, UN SDG goals as well, and we support. These are some of the key goals as well by way of various activities around the world too. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the ISO International Standards Organization 75th sort of annual event in London last year, where we were privileged to lead London Declaration for the world in terms of embedding that climate resilience, the climate change and sustainability agenda as part of everything we do in every sector, whether it's manufacturing, IT, banking, construction. And that London Declaration, was signed by more than 160 plus countries and their standard bodies as well. If you want to find out more about it, you can go to that our 2050.world website as well. And we welcome, we partner with the UN Race to Zero, initiative and BSI. We welcome you to be part of that community and conversation as well. Say how in India, we have a fantastic opportunity to be at the forefront of that initiative because we heard a lot of cities already coming, the new greenfield cities, the brownfield cities, and I think we are at the really right stage to sort of take that forward as well. And in terms of having that mindset about consensus based, and when I use word consensus, you know how difficult it is to get consensus within just for your own team, let alone the 160 plus countries in doing something together, right? So that consensus-based approach to embedding, all the goals outlined in Paris Agreement, UN SDGs, and UN call for action on adaptation and resilience is a big step forward, as a world we are taking to embed that best practice, and BSI is really proud and privileged to lead that initiative globally. Again, it's so important that we just keep repeating ourselves at every opportunity we get that climate change challenge is a real challenge, not for our generation, but for the next generations to come as well. And if we don't do anything now, I think it will be too late. Now is the time. And especially for India, with all these, fantastic initiatives around, smart cities and technologies and the talent pool that we have, and as a manufacturing hub, I think we have a great opportunity in front of us to, take India forward in that space globally. The second challenge we heard a lot in the previous panel discussion as well is the rapid urbanization. And that's real. We know that's real. If you go out, this Pragati Maidan, the amount of constructions going on roads, bridges, rails, not just in Delhi, but around the world is real. 1.7 million people to global urban population every week. Do we have capacity to meet this demand? I think no. So we need to be innovative, as the panelists say earlier. We need to be innovative with the constraints that we have in terms of resources, and come up with ideas to address this rapid urbanization challenge, so that it doesn't put unnecessary pressure on the healthcare system, education system, transport system. Well, if you are living in Delhi, I experienced the traffic this morning, you experience that daily as well, that the pressure that it is putting on the systems, right? So these are the two, I think, key drivers globally as well, how we see working with 193 plus countries around the world in various sectors. What is a smart city then? Is it about having a smart lights or smart poles or control and command centers? Or is it more than that? I think it is more than that. And I think we heard this morning from all the eminent speakers and panelists as well. Yeah, it is about increasing the pace at which we improve sustainability. We can't be complacent now. It is about improving resilience of your cities and communities and nations, and states. But what's most important is to have that collaborative leadership driving this. Without leadership, it will be very, very hard and challenging in any markets, not just India, everywhere globally, to achieve that vision. And I think the environment in India is so great, because we heard from some government ministers and representatives this morning, but also our honorable Prime Minister driving that digital India, sort of agenda for the past many years. So I think that collaborative leadership exists, and now is the time for the industry to actually embrace it and do their part as well. I think government is doing their part in terms of their interventions, in terms of their policies, in terms of providing the right platforms. And don't forget that smart cities, as somebody said in the panel, is about transforming services, whether it's at the municipality level services, as well as quality of lives of people. Okay, without that, smart city is just that, smart, but not useful. Okay, so bear that in mind. What you see on the right-hand side is, I don't know if you're familiar with that latest report published a few months ago, last year, by the World Economic Forum in terms of governing smart cities and the policy benchmarking white paper in collaboration with G20 Global Smart Cities Alliance. And those are the 5 core principles of any smart cities around the world. You take, Helsinki or any other city. Singapore, for example, is one of the best, in ranking always, in terms of smart cities. And what are they doing that we can learn from them, right? They are doing really, really well in those 5 core principles in terms of inclusivity, social impact that they are creating, in terms of security and resilience, data security, so, that the citizens don't have that worry about, is my data protected, my identity protected. It's about privacy and transparency, right? Openness and interoperability, because in smart cities, we would see a lots of systems interacting with each other. It's a network of systems, right? The transport, the energy, water, waste, healthcare systems. And, how can we have that interoperability between different systems, whether it's technology systems, the SCADAs, the GIS, the BEAM, and so many other things. And how can it improve? it was so great to hear from New Delhi Municipal Council, the representative, that the reason why they are so successful is because of their financial sort of management. That operational and financial resilience is so critical in terms of sustaining the smart city initiative. It's all well and good to start the smart city initiative, but sustaining it for the long period and achieving those benefits for the citizens is so important. Just wanted to highlight a few things here, in terms of smart city and BSI's commitment, in terms of how smart city projects and different panelists, again, we heard this morning, how they can help the broader supply chain through smart contracts, for example, smart procurement, Mr. Rahul mentioned as well. And how can we support the Indian sort of public-private sector to still adhere to that Make in India sort of agenda, and but take it to the global level, the global benchmark. And I think this is where BSI can bring that global dimension to India's already forward-thinking smart city agenda, and work with you and support you in establishing trust and resilience in what you're doing, whether it's your products, IoT products, whether your systems or whether your city-level governance, and we can work with you in partnership and support you in that space. Yes, I do work for Standards Institute, so I am a bit of a standards geek and nerd. But I think it would be helpful for you all to also, have this reference point as well, that if you're aiming to take your smart city products, solutions, services, city-level governance to a global benchmark level, then these are the ones that you should be looking at and aiming at. And at BSI, we played a key role in not only developing these standards with the international communities, but also we can help you embed these best practices either as part of your city governance strategy, processes, or your product level IoT strategies and so forth as well. We can go one step further working with you and benchmark your city framework against some global city frameworks as well, and give that perspective, global perspective as well. Because without having processes, and I call it in my language, without having some kind of method in madness, I think it's people are going to struggle to scale it up. So you must have some kind of method in madness, and these international standards give you that framework to put some method in that madness, what we are trying to do. So I highly recommend that, have a look at them. If you have any questions, then yeah, ask us or ask global community, whoever you want to ask. But these are the key standards. When we say smart cities, it has many moving parts, which I'm sure you are the expert. I'm not. But what we learned from working with other smart cities around the world, you have to consider components. Like you have smart products, smart sensors, smart systems, smart assets, smart communities, which rolls up to become smart city, which in turn makes smart nation, right? And the world smarter. So, and this is where at BSI, not only standards, but also products, we have lots of product manufacturers out there, that we can support, benchmark your product. If you have IoT product, for example, how can I trust that product, that if I install in my city or community, that it is safe to use, my data will be protected. And where is that global benchmark? And I talked about the previous, the standard slide. We can help you do that. And we have been doing that around the world. This is just one of the examples I thought I'd pull up. Sejong City in South Korea, fantastic city. I don't know if you know about their city plan and their vision up to 2030. Really great aspiration and vision. And we've been working with Sejong City level, leadership team since 2017-18, and supporting them in embedding their ISO 37106 level framework in terms of the smart city operating model and what good looks like. Okay, looking at this client-centric approach. And we do that by by, on the top right corner, we provide that, sort of benchmark against that. And it's not a one-off activity. It's an annual commitment for the city to actually audit and validate their maturity and ensure that they are maturing in their smart city framework and not just stand still, right? And we could work with you, the city leaders in the room, if they are, we would be delighted to have this dialogue with you and see how we can benchmark your, wonderful smart city initiatives. And then they continued after Sejong City's success in terms of benchmarking against international best practices. They continued that with other cities as well. And that story then continued to other countries like Japan, China, and we would love to partner with the expert in India and bring that to India as well and help India to be at the forefront of this on the global stage. Finally, I don't know how are we doing time-wise, but we are okay, right? Yeah. And I thought I just, there are plenty of resources on internet. You will have plenty of resources as well. But these are 4 of my favorite resources when it comes to smart cities. You want to start off with something. In particular, I think it was Mr. Rahul Kapoor also made reference to the third from the left, like lessons learned from the smart cities in India in 2021, right? And that report and that lessons learned is being looked at by global community as well, not just India. It's a fantastic resource. So I'm sure you should be all proud of, contributing to it and bringing it to the global stage. But then you have, World Economic Forum lessons learned and policy levels, documents as well, and some BSI guidelines as well. And let's not forget the international level standards as well that can help you embed, that global best practice in whatever you do in smart city, whether it's product manufacturing, process, strategy, framework, and so forth, supply chain. And yeah, there's a bit of marketing and sales for BSI, but we do have offices, 12 offices around India, so do visit us. We have a stall as well somewhere in, sorry, I forgot the number, but we do have a stall. 4, number 4, I don't know where, but we do have but anyway, the point is that we do have local presence. So it's not a guy from London traveling and telling you this good story and then flying back tomorrow. We have real people here, part of you and your community driving this in India. So do contact us. And yeah, that's our very purpose. Our very founding purpose of BSI and why we do what we do is about inspiring trust for a more resilient world, right? And it couldn't be any more relevant than the times that we are living in today, sort of post-pandemic, but, at the edge of some kind of global, war situation and so forth. So resilience is at the heart of, I think, what we should be aiming for. And one last point I would like to leave you with is my very talented host just shared her insight with me while I was coming up. Always, think big. We have big visionaries. They thought big. We have big plans, big vision. So think big, start small, and act now, right? Now is the time to act if we genuinely want to address that, climate challenge, crisis challenge. So think big, start small, but act now. Thank you, Vimi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for that mantra also. And any quick 1 or 2 questions you can take before we move to the next speaker? So I think we don't have any questions, but I'm sure there are people going to be connecting with you at your kiosk. So thank you once again, Rahul. And as mentioned, cities, yes, around the world, the governments. There's a question? Okay. Cities and governments around the world are now focusing more on building resilience and more on sustainability. And especially as we are talking about climate resilience also, many of you might be aware, it was in fact in yesterday's news only that in Antarctica, the temperatures have risen almost by, I think, 40 degree, and in Arctic it is some 30 degree. So we need to, of course, reduce our carbon footprints, and towards that, the government of India has already set its target of 2070, net zero target of 2070, while the other countries of the world, some of the major countries of the world have committed at COP26 to reduce its carbon footprints and move to net zero by 2050. India has given a very realistic figure of 2070. So hopefully we'll be able to do that, and by 2030, almost 50% of we are the carbon emissions, reducing it by almost 1 billion tons. So we are hopefully on the path of building more resilient cities and sustainability.